我要100万，没有100万是不可能的。
我这700万，女方是一分我都不可能给的，这就是我的态度。
In 2011, Mr. Xiang from Hubei and Ms. Zhang secretly divorced. However, shortly after the divorce, this already divorced couple ended up fighting in court. The dispute was over the distribution of the 7 million yuan compensation Mr. Xiang received after winning a lawsuit. Ms. Zhang demanded 1 million yuan as compensation, but Mr. Xiang firmly refused. Why, after being divorced for so long, does Ms. Zhang still want compensation? What caused this argument?
因为你还把他当做你的老公吗？
对。现在他是这样想的，1分钱不给你，他自己过他自己的。
不可以吗？
In a talk show on a TV station, the show invited a divorced couple who had been separated for 7 years, Mr. Xiang and Ms. Zhang. They had not announced their divorce to the outside world, mainly due to concerns about their children and relatives, and continued to live together. They lived like this for 7 years until 1 year ago, when Mr. Xiang suddenly proposed to move out and live elsewhere. Given that they had been married for many years, this unusual move caught Ms. Zhang's attention. She knew their family didn't have much money. Apart from a factory they had, the only other property left was their home. Where was her husband planning to live after moving out? With this question in mind, Ms. Zhang began to investigate her husband's recent activities to see how he had the money to buy such an expensive house. To her surprise, she learned from a friend that Mr. Xiang had bought a house outside, in the city center, worth over 2 million yuan. Now there was a problem. Where did Mr. Xiang get so much money to afford such an expensive property? So, Ms. Zhang decided to ask her husband directly if it was true that he had bought a house. Mr. Xiang, being straightforward, didn't hide anything and admitted to buying the house. Then, Ms. Zhang kept asking where the money for such a large purchase came from. At first, Mr. Xiang, a little impatient, was reluctant to answer her, reminding her that they were already divorced and she had no right to interfere in his private matters. Finally, he just vaguely said the money came from a lawsuit settlement. As soon as Ms. Zhang heard this, she was overjoyed. She continued to ask about the origin of the money. After several attempts, Mr. Xiang finally couldn't take it anymore, stood up and prepared to leave, clearly not wanting to deal with her anymore. But Ms. Zhang, driven by the lure of money, wouldn't let go and directly blocked the door, saying that she was entitled to a share of the compensation. At this point, Mr. Xiang became furious. What did she mean? She deserves a share. Hadn't they been divorced for years? He refused to engage with her and headed for the door. However, what Mr. Xiang didn't expect was that Ms. Zhang, determined to claim her share of the huge sum, would go to great lengths. Ms. Zhang knew her husband had been in a lawsuit, but she didn't know if he would win or how much money it would bring. Regardless, they had been divorced for some time, so the money had nothing to do with her. Legally speaking, that was true. But faced with such a huge sum of money, she couldn't miss out on the opportunity to claim what she felt was rightfully hers. She believed that if the lawsuit had been filed before their divorce, the money would definitely have been hers too. In her pursuit of this money, Ms. Zhang figured out the details. The lawsuit had lasted for 6 years and stemmed from a dispute over mining rights. A company had illegally occupied a factory building owned by Mr. Xiang. After both parties disagreed on the management of the mineral resources, Mr. Xiang filed a lawsuit. The case had been dragging on in court for years, and during that time they had divorced. It wasn't until 6 years later that the court ruled in Mr. Xiang's favor. The company was ordered to compensate Mr. Xiang 7 million yuan, which sent shockwaves through both Mr. Xiang and Ms. Zhang's lives.
我要100万，没有100万是不可能的。
我这700万，女方是一分我都不可能给的，这就是我的态度。我这700万关你1毛钱关系。
This was 7 million yuan, not 700 yuan. When Ms. Zhang learned the truth, her heart was struck hard. Faced with such a large sum, she couldn't resist demanding her share. She approached her ex-husband Mr. Xiang and insisted she must get 1 million yuan. Mr. Xiang was shocked. They had been divorced for years, why should she have any claim to the money? He made it clear he wouldn't give her a cent. But Ms. Zhang wasn't going to give up. She kept pressing Mr. Xiang, refusing to let go until she got her 1 million yuan. Frustrated, Mr. Xiang had no choice but to leave the house again. But Ms. Zhang still wouldn't stop and called her mother, telling her that her ex-husband had received 7 million yuan, but wasn't giving her any. Ms. Zhang's mother was furious. But what she didn't know was that her daughter and Mr. Xiang had been divorced for 7 years. But Ms. Zhang never told her mother about the divorce, so her mother, unaware of the truth, decided to pay Mr. Xiang a visit to teach him a lesson.
我在里面吃饭，他就在外面踹门，踹了1个半小时。我在猫眼里看到姐姐踹门，我出去把他姐姐打了一巴掌。打一巴掌以后，他们都上来了的，母亲也接着我，他妹妹接着我，都来打我一个人的。我一个男人，我不敢。
怎么打你一个人？我在中间嘛，我在中间护着你吧。
但是
怎么打你呢？
最后把我关进去了3天。
When Mr. Xiang returned home in the evening, he saw Ms. Zhang and her mother. As usual, he greeted Ms. Zhang's mother. However, what he did not expect was that Ms. Zhang's mother immediately started scolding him. Mr. Xiang had no idea what the reason was, and he remained silent while being scolded. The scolding went on for about 20 minutes, and then Ms. Zhang's mother directly stated that she wanted to reclaim the 1 million yuan that belonged to her daughter. Mr. Xiang knew he couldn't stay silent anymore, so he directly replied, "I don't owe her a single penny." This response clearly enraged Ms. Zhang's mother, and she began scolding him even more fiercely. At this point, Mr. Xiang finally couldn't take it anymore and revealed the truth, that the two had already divorced. Ms. Zhang's mother was shocked by this news, as she had never known about it after all these years. Furthermore, Mr. Xiang had often visited his daughter's home during the past few years for the New Year's celebrations, and she had always thought their relationship was still fine. She was now stunned to learn that they had been divorced for 7 years. Thinking about it, Ms. Zhang's mother felt extremely sad. She couldn't understand why her daughter had divorced her husband. But that was not the point right now. The 1 million yuan was what mattered. Mr. Xiang explained that the money no longer belonged to Ms. Zhang, and he thought that would make her give up on the claim. After hearing this, Ms. Zhang's mother was silent for a long time. However, when she spoke again, she shocked Mr. Xiang once more. She said, "Since you are already divorced, you must compensate my daughter for her losses, and that compensation is 2 million yuan. Mr. Xiang was once again stunned. Not only was the money no longer related to her, but why was there an additional 1 million yuan in compensation? Ms. Zhang's mother explained, "Since you two were living together even after the divorce, and your daughter has been taking care of your daily life, she has wasted 7 years of her life. Shouldn't you compensate her?" Although Mr. Xiang repeatedly explained that they had already divorced, Ms. Zhang's mother didn't seem willing to let him off the hook. While her argument was somewhat reasonable, Mr. Xiang remained firm in his stance, insisting that the money had nothing to do with Ms. Zhang, and he would not give her a single cent. This made Ms. Zhang's mother furious. She even tried to hit Mr. Xiang, but he dodged. To prevent the conflict from escalating, Mr. Xiang decided to leave the house and stay at a friend's place for the night. Watching him leave, Ms. Zhang's mother angrily took out her phone and called the police, claiming that her son-in-law had hit her and fled the scene. The police arrived shortly afterward. Seeing Ms. Zhang's mother crying, the officers, unaware of the truth, believed her and decided to arrest Mr. Xiang. They quickly located his whereabouts through tracking and went to his friend's house to arrest him, taking him to the police station for temporary detention. Mr. Xiang was utterly confused, as he had never hit his mother-in-law. The police interrogated Mr. Xiang, and he truthfully explained the entire situation. After recording his statement, the police provided a solution, deciding to detain him for 3 days. After 3 days, Mr. Xiang was released, but now he could no longer tolerate the unfairness. How could he have been detained for 3 days for no reason? He decided to confront his ex-wife and ask her to explain everything.
我出来了，我就在他母亲那儿去理论，结果他父亲说，你不给我女儿200万，我上你新家去调解。
Then, Mr. Xiang returned to his own home and found that Ms. Zhang was not there. He guessed that she must have gone to her maternal home, so he went all the way to Ms. Zhang's mother's house. However, before he could even meet his ex-wife, Ms. Zhang's mother immediately started insulting him upon seeing him. Mr. Xiang could no longer tolerate this and began arguing with Ms. Zhang's mother. He stated that he had never physically assaulted her, so why was she calling the police to arrest him? Ms. Zhang's mother did not back down and immediately cursed at Mr. Xiang, demanding that he give her 2 million yuan, or she would call the police. Ms. Zhang's father even threatened to hang himself at Mr. Xiang's new house door, ensuring that Mr. Xiang would never be able to live in the new house. Faced with the death threat from Ms. Zhang's father, Mr. Xiang decided to temporarily avoid the situation and left Ms. Zhang's mother's house. However, this issue grew bigger and eventually became known by a local TV show production team. The production team then invited both Mr. Xiang and Ms. Zhang to appear on the show for a public interview, hoping to resolve the issue. When they arrived at the show, Ms. Zhang maintained her tough attitude and continued demanding 1 million yuan in compensation from Mr. Xiang. She even questioned why Mr. Xiang had secretly bought a house without informing her. Mr. Xiang directly fired back, stating that the money and house had nothing to do with her, and that he bought the house to fulfill his promise to their daughter, who had previously complained about her room being too small. However, no matter the reason, this money and the house had nothing to do with Ms. Zhang. Seeing that the topic of the house was not making progress, Ms. Zhang shifted the conversation back to the 1 million yuan. This time, she played the sympathy card. She claimed that after their divorce, Mr. Xiang's mother was seriously ill, and it was Ms. Zhang who took care of her. Furthermore, after Mr. Xiang's mother passed away, Ms. Zhang fulfilled her duties as a daughter-in-law by attending the funeral, and even if she did not deserve praise, she should still receive some compensation. Mr. Xiang retorted, saying that while it was true that Ms. Zhang took care of his mother, he had also cared for Ms. Zhang's brother, who had cancer, and spent a considerable amount of money on his treatment. Seeing that playing the sympathy card didn't work, Ms. Zhang once again changed the topic. She brought up the legal case, claiming that the lawsuit was filed before their divorce and should be considered joint property, meaning she was entitled to a portion of the compensation.
而且这个采矿权在我离婚过后，我又延续了2次，他没有出1分钱。
Mr. Xiang responded directly to this by saying that when they divorced, all property matters had already been clearly divided, so there were no disputes. Mr. Xiang then revealed something to everyone. He said he had figured out why Ms. Zhang insisted on getting the money. He then took out a stack of papers and handed them to the host. After reviewing them, the host was shocked and repeatedly asked if the contents were true. Mr. Xiang nodded and confirmed, saying that the papers contained Ms. Zhang's own words. It turned out that this was a guarantee letter from Ms. Zhang, promising never to gamble again.
又本人保证今后永不打麻将，否则打麻将再打麻将就离婚，不要1分钱。
From Mr. Xiang's words, it was revealed that Ms. Zhang had a bad habit of gambling, and she played big bets. Ever since they got married, Ms. Zhang had lost nearly 300,000 yuan playing cards, and her addiction was so severe that she often played all night long. During this time, Mr. Xiang had numerous arguments with her, asking her to stop, but Ms. Zhang ignored him completely. Even after they had a daughter, Ms. Zhang did not stop gambling. She would often leave their daughter waiting after school until she finished playing, or it was Mr. Xiang who went to pick up their daughter. Mr. Xiang had paid off tens of thousands of yuan of Ms. Zhang's gambling debts, and each time, Ms. Zhang wrote a guarantee letter saying she would never gamble again. However, she always forgot about it once she turned around. This is why Mr. Xiang was so opposed to giving Ms. Zhang any money. Even if he did give her money, it would likely be used as gambling funds. Moreover, these matters had nothing to do with her in the first place. Faced with these undeniable facts, Ms. Zhang continued to deny everything, claiming that while she liked playing cards, it was not as serious as Mr. Xiang made it out to be, and that the guarantee letters were all fabricated by him. At this point, Mr. Xiang did not wish to argue any further, but the truth of the matter remained unclear. However, this fierce battle over money did not stop because of the TV show. Ms. Zhang ultimately stated that she would not give up on the 1 million yuan compensation, while Mr. Xiang firmly declared that he would never pay the 1 million yuan. The matter remained unresolved, but it was clear that Ms. Zhang bore a large share of the responsibility for the situation. Hopefully, Mr. Xiang and Ms. Zhang can communicate better and come to a reasonable solution.
In this story, we see not just a simple battle over divorce assets, but the accumulated grievances and conflicts between two people in their marriage. Whether it's Ms. Zhang's persistent demand for 1 million yuan or Mr. Xiang's resolute refusal, both sides have different interpretations of their past marriage. A husband who had sacrificed for his family and daughter, now disillusioned by his wife's relentless demands, and a wife, troubled by her gambling addiction and life pressures, who sees the large compensation as an irresistible temptation. Some viewers may find Ms. Zhang too greedy, while others might see Mr. Xiang as too cold-hearted. But is this extreme division not the norm in many divorces in modern society? After a divorce, can the grievances between a couple really be resolved through a legal ruling? Or does the division of money simply fail to sever the emotional and financial entanglements? No matter how you view this dispute, controversy is inevitable. Everyone has their reasons and positions, but this is perhaps the greatest issue in marriage. When a marriage falls apart, trust and understanding disappear, leaving only pain and a battle for interests. So, what truly deserves to be preserved in marriage? Is it the emotions or the rationality? So, what do you think about this case? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section. Let's explore this issue together. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Your support is very important to us, and we will continue to provide better content for you. Thanks again for watching, and see you next time.